What I am trying to advise you here is simply don't get carried away by your overthinking. However, this sound advice usually goes unnoticed or is taken too lightly. So I am going to try to make it stick in your mind through the example of an analogy. To that end, I would like you to take a look at the diagram on your left for those of you who are watching the video book, and the diagram below if you are reading the book. You will notice that there are three diagrams. They all have one thing in common. It is that there is a person who is trying to fly a kite. In the first diagram, this person is flying the kite and the kite is small. As a result, the person is not affected. In the second diagram, the kite has become very big and the person is basically taken off the ground and carried away by the kite. As a solution to this problem, I offer the third diagram in which the person is, as you can see, very well grounded through some kind of device, and the kite is equally large as in the second case. Consequently, in the third diagram, this person is not carried away. Now let us understand what is the practical implication of this concept. Let's say that somebody is just sitting below a tree and contemplating. As we have discussed earlier in this series of videos or video book or ebook, whichever way you want to call it, there is a pattern in which the thought expand in our heads. One thought leads to another thought. It leads to another thought. Eventually, there are many thoughts that arise from the original thought, and by the end, there is no connection between the last thought and the first thought. However, between each two pairs of thoughts, there is always something in common, like it could be a smell or a visual cue or an event or a feeling or an idea. In the normal circumstances, the chain of thoughts will not disrupt us, and thus we will be like the person in the first diagram. Let us illustrate with a very simple thought. It is one that we discussed earlier. I'm using it because it's very simple and it's a continuation from the earlier sections. Let's say somebody has made a mistake and is thinking over about it. In a normal situation, this person will think about the consequences of his mistake and the threat that he might be caught. Thereafter, his mind might be taken away to another topic like the food or the call from a friend that just popped up on his mobile. In this way, the thought of the mistake is not taking a big toll in that person's mind. Now let's imagine that the thought of the mistake is raging like a wildfire. The fear of being caught is getting humongous. This fear creates new hormones to be secreted, like adrenaline. I'm bringing this particular hormone because it excites the person into a flight or fight response. Further, this hormone leads to more thoughts of how to escape if one is caught. Many times it's not even a planning session that is going on in the mind, but it is a thought where one is victimized and one is helpless. So it is more like the freeze situation instead of the fight or flee situation. The mistake might be a minor one, but the way the mind is constantly bombarding the awareness with it makes it appear like a giant. Consequently, even hunger, thirst, and the constant call from a friends or relatives on his mobile don't seem to be able to stop his chain of thoughts. Soon, this thought or overthinking about his mistake will turn into some kind of physical symptoms like we discussed earlier, not being limited to a wart or an ulcer or some rashes on the skin or even a stomach ache in the form of tissue damage in the intestine because of the overthinking. This person might lead himself to behave in more stupid ways than is necessary. This would be to minimize the mistake that he thinks he did. His mind cannot hold it together, and his conscious mind decides to take actions that are unconducive to the current situation. In this way, he is panicked and his mind hasn't stopped thinking since the last 72 hours. He is just out of his mind. So we can easily relate this person's situation with the second diagram in which the kite carries away the person. It almost seems laughable to say that a kite can make a person lift off from the ground, but this is as ridiculous as it gets when people overthink. So the remedy that I'm suggesting is that you take this analogy and use it when you are overthinking. I want you to know when exactly your overthinking is carrying you away, like a kite lifting you off the ground. So you will ask, what is the next thing to do? The answer is in the third diagram, whereby you ground yourself with the floor or some kind of adhesives. Well, what does that mean at the cognitive level? It means that you can use the various models that I have described earlier, starting from the rectangular uh, model to the mind mapping up to the structured mind mapping frameworks. You should also try to consult an expert. So, what I'm trying to say is, in order to be well grounded, you need to have some kind of frameworks on which you can rest your mind and allow it to think in the correct way. This particular section is to help you give a visualization for your state of overthinking. And if you are able to imagine that picture when you are suffering from overthinking, you will be able to put a brake on your mind. This is the main idea of this section. Besides the earlier frameworks, when I talk about being well grounded, I also mean that you should have the proper philosophies in order to not suffer from overthinking. In this particular case of the mistake, I'll give you some example of philosophies that are supposed to keep you well grounded, and if you do not have them, you will be carried away. Philosophy number one: whatever happens, happens for the right reason. If the mind is not able to ground itself on such a philosophy, then it will go on a tangent when it comes to overthinking. Now, you might ask, what would be the right reason to be caught when done a mistake? Well, no, the most important benefit of being caught is that you will be able to learn from the mistake. Then you'll argue that you could have learned even before being caught. According to this philosophy, being caught will accentuate the mistake and will help you improve on that particular mistake beyond not having been caught. I know I'm asking a lot of leap in faith when I'm bringing this philosophy, but if you want to control your overthinking, you need to have the correct philosophy. Philosophy number two: if I fall, I can stand up again. In the case of the mistake, bad things can happen if one is caught indeed. Therefore, one must be prepared for the worst case scenario in which one falls. But then one must be grounded in the idea that one can stand up again and rise to fight another fight. Of course, this philosophy has nothing to do with that particular mistake, but it helps you stay grounded. Again, without such a concept, we tend to be carried away by our overthinking because the emotions of fear is so high that it creates more thoughts that causes the overthinking to grow into a gigantic kite able to fly us off the ground. Philosophy number three: I am protected always. This kind of faith to many might appear childish and irrational, but it is very important to believe that there are some forces beyond one's conscious awareness that is able to protect us from evil and even the foolish things that we do in our lives. Like in the earlier philosophy, this is not a natural thought process, but you have to work on it and put more emphasis in your thinking. By so doing, this thought will engrave itself, and you will be able to hold your ground no matter how big the kite becomes. In this way, I gave you only three philosophies with which you can ground yourself so that overthinking doesn't carry you away. These are the three basic philosophies, and there are many other philosophies that can help us stay grounded. What is important from this example for you to learn is that in order for overthinking not to carry you away, you need to have strong, positive, realistic philosophies in your mind. Philosophy is not only for the old, white, bearded person standing on top of a mountain, but it is for everybody. In fact, it is even more important for the layman than for those sages. They won't be committing all those kinds of mistakes that we mere mortals have to commit on a day-to-day basis in the process of living, making a living, and basically surviving. We need to have philosophies to keep us grounded. I hope that through this section you were convinced about my take on needing to have a philosophy. I will not be going into the metaphysics of philosophy or the definition or even the Wikipedia definition of philosophy. Those I will leave to you because it is beyond the scope of this book, as many things have been, and even though I know that I should have covered them, I did not because of the same reason earlier. Finally, I just see you as a well-grounded overthinker like myself. I have just mentioned three philosophies, but myself, I tend to use a dozen or maybe a half century of philosophies, but I will be talking more about those in the future in other books. You can't be cool without having strong philosophies. That's the bottom line.